Hi, I'm Daniel Gold, and welcome to the Gold Standard Leadership Lab. By day, I'm a partner at a leading advisory firm where I draw upon my background as an attorney to help my clients succeed. This podcast, though, is my personal project, completely separate and apart from my day job, but reflects the same passion that I exhibit everywhere for teaching, mentoring, and helping others succeed through simple, impactful lessons. It is my hope that you'll walk away with practical takeaways to help you on your leadership journey. Thanks for being a part of this community and for joining me in the Leadership Lab. Let's get started. I want to start with a question that I think most leaders answer too quickly. Are you serving your organization, or are you serving your position within it? I want you to take a second with that one, because those two things can look identical from the outside for a very long time. And then what happens is one day something happens. A decision gets made, a client gets claimed, a task gets declined, and the answer becomes very, very clear very fast. And so today's episode is about humility. And I want to be careful here because it's not humility as a soft skill, not humility as something you put in your leadership philosophy statement and then forget about it on a Tuesday afternoon when someone steps on your territory. I want to talk today about humility as an operating model, as the thing that when it actually runs through an organization makes the silos fall down on their own. And to do this, I have two very different stories for you. And they come from different places in a leader's life, but they land in exactly the same spot. In the first one, I call the shoe shine principle. So a few years ago, I visited a close friend of mine, same industry, very sharp guy. He and his business partner had moved into a new 2-story office building, and they were showing me around. And as we walked toward his office, something stopped me. Right there, in plain view, was a full-sized commercial shoe shine chair. No joke, a full-sized shoe shine chair. The kind that you'd see at an airport or an upscale hotel. You had the pedestal, you had the elevated seat, you had the footrests, and alongside it was shoe polish, rags, brushes, the whole setup was there. So I looked at my friend and I asked him what I think anyone would ask, which was, why? And he said very plainly and without missing a beat, because Daniel, it is a reminder. So of what, I asked? The shoe shine place you used to go to? And he smiled and he said no. It's a reminder that none of us in this company is above the others. For this company to be what it can be, we all have to lend a hand in helping one another. Every single one of us. So I was tracking, but actually not fully. So I said, okay, but how does a commercial shoe shine chair do that for you? And then he told me the story behind it. Not long before, they had brought on a new sales professional. And one afternoon, my friend asked him to run over to the office supply store and pick up a few things. The new hire pushed back, and he said the errand was actually beneath him because his job was driving sales, not running errands. And so my friend looked at him for a moment, and then he looked down at the man's shoes, scuffed and unpolished. And he said, if your job is sales, how are you doing it walking around in shoes like that? So my friend reached into his desk drawer, pulled out shoe polish, and told the man to sit down. You see, the co-founder and the co-owner of the company, my friend, got down and shined the new hire's shoes. And when he was done, he looked up at him and he said very plainly, no one in this company is above a task that serves the good of this company as a whole. And that includes me shining your shoes. Now please go to the office supply store. His business partner then went out and bought that commercial chair. And they put it where everyone could see it every single day. And I love this for so many reasons. And I want to stay here for a minute before we really move on to the second story, because there's more happening in this story than a good anecdote about a humble founder. What my friend did in that moment was not just an act of service. It was an act of empowerment. He created a teaching moment that was so visceral, it was so specific, it was so impossible to forget that it became part of the company's cultural DNA. And then he and his fellow co-owner made it physical by putting it in the room, and he gave the lesson a permanent address. That chair is not a decoration. That chair is the culture's memory when the founder is not in the room. Think about what it communicates to every person who walks through that office, new hire or 20-year veteran. It says your title does not exempt you from service. Your function does not exempt you from service. Your seniority does not exempt you from service. We are all here to serve, full stop. Now, this is where this gets organizational. And this is the part I want you to sit with. If you lead a team, if you lead a practice, if you lead a department, or even an entire firm. When this model actually runs through an organization, when people have genuinely dropped the ego and are oriented toward service, something truly remarkable happens. The silos collapse, not because of a reorg, not because of a new incentive structure, not because leadership sent out a memo about collaboration. They collapse because the thinking that creates silos in the first place, it's my client, it's my practice, it's my service line, it's my utilization number, that thinking has no oxygen when everyone is operating from a place of service. Think about what drives a silo mentality to begin with, because it is the belief that my success is a separate thing from your success or from the firm's success, that protecting my territory is rational because the organization rewards me for what I own, not what we build together. And that is not a structural problem. That is an ego problem wearing a structural costume. Because when a leader, and I mean a real leader, not just someone with a title, when that person is genuinely operating from service, they don't think in those categories. They ask, what does this client need? What does this team need? What does this moment require? And they do that thing regardless of whose name is on the account. Your performance goals, your utilization, your origination, those don't disappear in a service model. They get better. Why? Because the investments the organization makes in marketing, sales, operations, and talent development are all driven by the same purpose. When everyone is growing from service rather than from ego, the metrics follow. The alignment is not a strategy you implement. It is a byproduct of the posture, and it does require a true leader. And it does require, in the case of my friend, someone to kneel down first. It requires someone to pull out the shoe polish. Now, the second story was sent to me by a listener of the Gold Standard Leadership Lab and also a former colleague and friend of mine. And this story has stayed with me. The story is about a principal of a school in Atlanta. 33 years in education, 15 of those years were spent as the principal of his school. And he served the children, the families, and the community. And at 58, he retired. And he thought the free time would be good. But for him, well, it wasn't. He missed it. He missed giving. He missed contributing to something that mattered. And so he went back. Now, you might think that he went back as a superintendent, an administrator, some title that honored his long tenure. But no, he did not. He went back as a site manager, otherwise known as a handyman, otherwise known as a part-time janitor depending upon the day. He physically, literally mops the bathroom floors. He cleans the gutters. He inspects the fire extinguishers. And in his own words, he still feels like he's contributing meaningfully to a place that he really cares about and loves. This man ran the building for 15 years. He knew every family. He shaped the culture of that school for over a decade. And he came back to clean the bathrooms and the gutters. That is not servant leadership as a practice. That is servant leadership as a true identity. The role changed completely, but the orientation never did. And here is the distinction I want you to hold between these two stories, because I think it tells us something important about humility and where it lives in a life. Now, my friend deployed humility as a leader with full authority and full intention. He knew what he was doing. He chose the act. He institutionalized it. That is humility as a leadership instrument. It is powerful and intentional, producing results that outlast that moment. The principal is different. He has nothing left to prove. He has no authority. He has no audience, no lesson to teach any longer. He came back because the place mattered to him, and he still had something to give. And he was completely at peace with being the least important person in the building. That is humility that has run all the way through. It is not being deployed. It is just what he is. And so here's the thing that I keep coming back to with both stories. One should not have to wait until retirement to arrive at that conclusion. The story about the principal is a beautiful story. And somewhere inside, it is a quiet question for every leader listening right now. What would it take for you to operate from that place today? Not at the end of your career. Not after the title has expired and there is nothing left to protect. I mean, right now. What would you do tomorrow morning that would be different if you had already let go of the thing you are holding on to? Do you know what the answer may even be? So I want to bring this back to something practical, because this show is not just about some inspiration, although I am flattered when people tell me that it is. It's really about the application. Humility as an operating model means this: every action and every inaction is an act of service or a literal failure of it. Those are the only two categories. It's really very binary. When you claim a client as yours, it's my client, rather than the firm's client, that's a failure of service. When you decline to do a task because you think it's beneath your title, I promise you that is a failure of service. And when you withhold information from a colleague about a client because sharing it does not serve your number, I promise you that is a failure of service. And when you kneel down with shoe polish in your hand to make a point that matters, that, my friends, that is service. When you mop a floor in a building you used to run because you still care about the children and the families, that is service. The measure of your commitment to service is not what you say about it. It is what you are willing to lay down to protect it. The sales rep laid down his pride. My friend laid down the distance that comes with being the founder. The principal laid down the title, the status, and the entire architecture of his professional identity. The principal's story is one I keep returning to as I work on my own leadership book, because what he did at a retirement is really the completion of the golden leadership cycle that I talk about here in the GSL. He reinvented, he held, and he empowered the next version of himself to keep giving without needing anything at all in return. That is what the cycle looks like when it runs all the way through a life. But more on that in my book. Because remember, leadership, it isn't about perfection. It is about progress. Take this lesson, put it into action, and continue setting the gold standard in your own life and at work. I'll see you all next time.